I've seen some of them. But this is a more sustainable pace, and which reduces a lot of stress as well, right? Does that make sense? You guys understand WIP? Okay. How many of you work on a Scrum team? How do you guys manage WIP? Yeah. What are other ways that you see it on a Scrum team?
You get our PO to say no.
Get our PO to say no? Just take on more.
The time box that we have with our sprint controls how much we
Yeah.
bring it to.
And so for me, the difference between, say, Scrum and Kanban as it relates to WIP limits, in Kanban, it's explicit. We call out on each column what our WIP limit is for that given type of work, right? That's what you see, the 4, 7, and 4. The team had determined that in this column, I can only work on 4 things at a given time. And this gives us an even flow. In Scrum, I say that's more implicit. You've got the boundary of the 2-week or 3-week time box. What's that?
Target velocity.
Target velocity. But yeah, you know what you can get through, but it doesn't prevent you necessarily from having that log jam at the end. How many of you do a burn down chart and you have what I call the cliff dive? Right? You get nothing done, nothing done, nothing done, and just drop. That's an indication that you're not managing your WIP within the 2-week time box very well. And so you still have this, even though you're not necessarily looking at it in the same way in a Scrum team. So it's important to kind of consider that as another metric, perhaps, or another thing to look at. And I'll show you how to look at that same cumulative flow diagram here in a bit.
Mr. Dunn, can we also add that on the Scrum team, you have to be vigilant about your available capacity, because training and travel and then other things take capacity.
Yeah.
Understand that before you come.
Yep. Yeah, and capacity is an interesting metric as well. So let's say, for example, we have 200 hours available for us to do a given body of work in a sprint, whatever that might be. I'm not going to attempt to do the math, but let's just use easy numbers like 200. And then due to capacity, and let's say our average velocity is 50 story points. So our capacity normally is 200. We do 50 story points, and then the next sprint we have half the people taking vacation, and we have 100 hours available, and the team commits to 65 points. And as a Scrum Master, if you're a Scrum Master, I hope you're asking the team, how in the heck do you think you will get that done? I think it's awesome. I think it's very admirable that you want to achieve more than you ever achieved with half the amount of available hours to work, right? So that's an important metric. It's not necessarily a one-to-one, hours to story points necessarily, but it's certainly a metric to look at and to ask questions about, right? Make sense? Yes?
I thought hours weren't supposed to matter though. Is that just for making story points themselves, or?
Hours matter because it's how much time we have in a given day, but story points don't correlate necessarily to the number of hours, right? So a 6-point story, I had worked with a developer once that had a little conversion chart on his screen, and 6 hours equals a 2-point story. It's not that, but when we consider how much time is available, if we say I'm available for 6 hours a day, I've got 2 hours of administrative stuff, whatever. Maybe it's training, I start deducing training or different things like that. So I can't possibly do the same amount of work, whatever that is.
Right. At the beginning of your sprint is where you're figuring out how much availability everybody has to be. Well, we could do 100 points last sprint, but this sprint will only do 60 points likely because of the availability.
It's worth a conversation, right? Because going with my example where I said we have half the capacity available, I mean, that's a clue that we're probably not going to be able to deliver. But I'm not gonna tell the team, no, you're not gonna be able to deliver 50 points. I'm gonna challenge them on how do you think you can do this when we have way less hours available to us, right?
And you would know your capacity by taking the average of all the sprints you've completed and how many points. you're
Capacity
getting, or
is-
how would you know what?
Yeah, so if it's a 10-day sprint, and I'm taking 5 of those days off, generally speaking, I think most teams say 6 hours is the average per day. So what is that? 6 times 5 times, so 120? No, wait, 60? 60 hours? So I have 60 hours available for me if I'm working at capacity, right? Again, there's that 2-hour fudge. I've got administrative stuff that just has to get done because it's work. My boss wants to talk to me, he reprimand me,
But for
or
like a
whatever.
team's capacity, right? It's just
Then it's just
that
the
same thing
multiple-
times however many.
Yeah, if there's 10 people, we've got 600, right? So it's a metric, it's worthy of conversation. All right, so I can talk more about that, but let's get to round 2. Round 2, your goal is still the same, produce as many airplanes as possible in a 2-minute time box. The one rule that we will change, remember at the beginning I talked about we're gonna mess around with some levers, and the one lever that we're gonna play with is managing our whip. So in this round, our whip for each station is 1. In the way that shows itself, if I'm station 1 and I make my fold, I can hand it to station 2 because they have nothing in their queue yet, right, and so forth. But once I get to the second one and station 2 is still working on something, I can't make another fold until, I can't hand off my work until that person has finished their work and handed it off. You get what I'm saying?
Yep.
So if the next station has availability, you can hand yours off and begin your next body of work. Because again, this is a factory, and it's very dangerous work.
Can we burn through our stockpile inventory to start? Where do we have to start from scratch?
We have, we're going to recycle these because it's going to be too hard to, if you mean reuse the airplanes that we already folded, yeah, anything that has a fold, we're going to recycle. We'll start from scratch from a clean slate,
Okay, all right.
okay?
Also, we don't get to reuse them.
So you don't get to reuse those. And the reason you can't reuse those is because it aged. And this is high-tech paper. And the kind of aging it did, it's at a different rate. It needs to age at the same rate. Okay? Everybody clear? So your whip is 1. You only get to do 1. You can't hand it off until the next station is available. Okay? So you get 2 minutes and go. $50. 50.
another one? No?
15. Five, four, three, two, one, and stop. All right. The factory floor has shut down. How? So accountants, take your inventory of how many planes you delivered, how many planes have at least one fold but never took flight, and that's a debit. We didn't do any more training, right? So there's not, so we just have planes delivered and inventory, which cost us money. All right. We had a question over here.
Oh, sorry.
So for every plane delivered, we make 2 million, but then we subtract. So if you want to look at it this way, we get a check for 3 million, but we had to spend $1 million. So it's a $2 million profit for every plane delivered. So we're not counting that as an inventory. Anything that's in motion that has a single fold, then I'll debit 1 million. Okay. All right. So how many did we produce this time? 6? 7? Show off. How was the inventory this time? 0, 0, 2, 1. Those are all pretty good, right? So we didn't have any wasted work. Well, a little bit. And what did your profit look like? Even though you had 2 that were in motion, better than last time. Good. You guys the same?
We had a positive net, but it just barely offset our negative net
From the first time?
Yeah, so we
Okay.
still haven't made any money, we're still in money.
But if you look round over round, compared to round 1,
200% increase in
200% increase. Good. Did everybody realize similar numbers? At least 200%? All right. So I'm going to give you maybe a minute to debrief with your team, observers, share what you saw with your team. You guys discuss what things you may want to consider. Yes? So let's talk about it. We weren't able to switch tasks. We may. We might.
Why do we have to pay for? I've got 1 fold. You've got 2. You've got 2 folds plus writing it. You've got 2 folds plus writing. Seems like right. Yeah. Why can't Jeff do at least one of your folds? What about cross training? I think he's right. You can look at that and see.
All right. So let's hear what you guys talked about on your teams. What did you guys come up with? What are some thoughts? Yes. Okay, hold on, guys. So the comment here is you're going to retrain some of your workers? Multiple skills. Okay. I heard fire management. Oh, you coughed, my friend. Yes, over here.
So ours is retraining, but doing some tasks, spreading out the tasks.
Spreading out tasks, okay, which would require some training because some don't have those skills. They will. What else?
Gonna go retrain.
How is the whip
For
working?
everybody.
Not the work in progress, limiting that. How did that work for you guys?
The problem with
Hey guys, there's a lot of talking. Thank you.
the problem with web is person here sitting here not doing this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do something with this.
And what is that? What does that tell you? If you've got an idle worker, then what might you do? You might move tasks. You might fire the
That's
worker.
probably the biggest thing that we noticed was, at first, we're like, how long does it take to make one? Okay, so let's just make sure we're building it at that rate, but then you have the idle time.
Right.
If you just say, once someone's available, gives them work, you'll be more efficient at actually doing anything else, but
Right.
that's why we're like, well, now spread out the tasks evenly, so everybody's busy once the line gets through the first 20.
Right. And so when you constrain yourself enough, like we constrained it as far as we could go and say you only have one that you can do. It's very easy to see where you get someone's idle in the line. And so one way to do it is, yeah, maybe move some tasks where it's more even. But you would have to know, like the metric out, how long does it take to do that task, like you guys were talking about, right? The other might be is that you change the whip limit. You might adjust the whip limit, but because we saw it with one way, we may up it, we may lower it. As you saw on the diagram that I showed on an earlier slide, the first column had 4 was their whip limit, the second column was 7. It might be because of the number of people, or maybe the tasks take less time, but they still had a pretty even flow, right? So those are some of the levers that you can kind of manipulate. Yes, sir?
So that training doc,
Yep.
so if we were to train each individual to do all 4 steps, they all had their marker, in 2 minutes, we could probably get each person to create 2 to 3 whole planes. If we had a skill set that was equal among all, and they were trained to do the entire process.
We could do that, but we won't. For the sake of demonstration, we're not going to do that. And so,
First, you can't do everything.
so I want you guys to, yeah.
Cross-skill team.
Thank you. So that's a good segue into self-organize, right? So by reducing WIP, you can see some of the problems in your system. Maybe your factory observer, your FO, maybe they were able to witness some of that because they do have a different perspective. And then by solving some of these problems, we can improve our throughput and our quality, right? So again, as we talked about before, that station 4 is kind of scrambling to get things done because they seem to be the bottleneck, because they have a lot on their plate to do. And so we don't want to stress them out. Enabling focus, it enables our focus and promotes our quality. And it helps us focus on finishing. I think we had 2 tables that had some stuff in flight, well, not in flight, but folds being made, right, before it took flight. And so that was inventory that cost. It cost us money. So we have less overhead or inventory, and it reduces rework and defects. I've noticed none of you are doing any rework. You're like, sling it and it's good enough, right? Yeah. And then you get faster quality feedback. Think about the feedback that you get when you toss your airplane in this exercise, right? That's feedback. You're like, ooh, I made it really simple. I said, it's just got to fly a few feet and you're good. You could probably ball a piece of paper and throw it a couple feet, and that's not real high quality.
You
right?
want to sit on that?
It's not a very good airplane. So I made the rules. Yeah,
It's not a requirement. It's not halfway.
but it's not good enough for Jets or us. So we get that feedback with each time, right? And we're also, when we limit our whip, we also get to see what's happening within the system, within the work system, much, much clearer. So let's spend a little bit of time talking about flow. Anybody seen a diagram like this? I know a few of you have. Yeah. So this is called a cumulative flow diagram. And it looks way more complicated than it actually is. There's actually a setting in Excel, if you have the right data, it'll pump something out like this for you. I forget what it's called, but it does. Looks like this. But what this shows us is, if you think about some of the Kanban boards that I showed examples of, let's just simply call it doing, or to do, doing, and done, or ready for work, in progress, and then completed. And it's just showing an accumulation of the work that's being done in those columns, right? So how many of you are working in TFS or Jira? And you have columns that are labeled. Those things would be represented here. If you had 4 columns, you might see 4 bars or bands of work. What we see here is kind of an even distribution of work. I expect this bottom one to accumulate over time, right? But this shows me here that if I look at that band, that's pretty wide compared to that band, maybe twice as much. You guys see the red laser, right? So that's something to look at perhaps. But this, if I look at from here to here, that's our whip limit. Or what the work that's in progress, not the whip limit, but that's the work that's in progress. Let me show you another. It might look this way with the 4 bands. The green depicts what's in development, the orange is in code review, the pink is ready for deploy, and then the yellow is done. And the way to look at this, it's over time, so you see dates here, and this is simply an accumulation of how many cards or how many tickets or how many stories, whatever you want to call them, was completed over that period of time. Does that make sense? Okay. So I want to spend just a couple moments on how do I analyze this data. I find this information useful because it gives us a sense of what is going on in our system. You guys kind of experienced it making airplanes, and you felt a sense of stress maybe because so much was on your plate. You're trying to rush through work. There's too much coming in, and I don't have enough time or capacity to get stuff done. If you look at this diagram, if this band is the work that's being done, what do you notice here? What's that? Well, on day 19 and 20, we got stuff done. And on days 39 and 40, it looks like we got stuff done. But nothing got done any other day. Is that a good or a bad thing? It depends. It depends on what?
Stop starting your definition of that.
Could be. What if we have a strict deployment process that I can't deliver any code to production except once a month, once every other month, whatever that time frame is, right? So that's probably every 20 days, so we might have, it might be a horrible thing, right? But it also might be exactly what we expect in our system if we have release guidelines like that. What else do you see here? If I look at this, kind of this band here, if this is the stuff that's testing, this is the stuff that's in development, the red is what's ready. What do you see here? What do you notice? Yeah, developers took everything from ready, and it might mean that you have a developer that's working on 3 things at once, maybe. Yeah. And then once everything gets done, look what happens. Test has a ton on their plate now, right? So what's important, this is a useful piece of information. If you're doing Scrum, this is valuable for a Scrum team. If you're doing Kanban, this is valuable for if you're doing Waterfall, this is valuable for a Waterfall. This is valuable information to understand what's happening within your work system, right? What's going on, where you're being overburdened perhaps, where your WIP limits are off, maybe. And maybe their WIP limits are fine the way they stated them, but they're not being honored, right? So we said we got a WIP limit of 4, but I've got 10 things in queue. Any team have that going on? Yeah.
It could also
I know.
It could also just be the nature of the work.
Could be the nature of the work. Yeah,
One line of code requires 10 days of testing.
maybe. But again, what is most important about this piece of data? Because I don't have the data underneath that. I stole this diagram from conference in DC. So I don't know the underlying data. I don't know the story about how this data was, how it was compiled. What's most important is the conversation that you have as a team. What you notice is an anomaly within this data set, right? So if you guys need help with cumulative flow, you see a little bit of it when you do a burn down chart, because like I said, you have that cliff dive situation. You're going to see something like this here, just in a different way. It's just depicted in a different way. Okay? All right. It's not as complicated as it looks, but it's complicated at first. But once you start digging into these things, it becomes hugely, hugely valuable for you. How many of you are using this? Yeah, a few of you. Question over here?
Does Jira have like canned reports for this, or is the burn down thing kind of?
Yes.
Jira does.
Yes.
Jira does. There you go. All right. So, round 3, third and final round.
Oh, we can only make one modification.
You can make 1 mod. So I'm going to give you 60 seconds to talk on your team on what modification you need to make. Welcome to the show.
1 mod. So I didn't have that. Okay, then I've got more work to do. Okay, well, let's see, Mr. Just the Paralyzed is for me.
But the bending, VLB plane, the fly.
That's like not bad. Yeah, I didn't see we got one.
There's a training issue.
Hang on, the pen.
That's
All right.
You can only do 1 mod.
Oh, yeah, one.
That was exactly 60 seconds. You guys have a modification you will make in your system? Okay. We've got overtime going on here.
Were you watching where the bottleneck was?
You guys, everyone decided on what change they will make within their
No
system?
offense. I'm not sure you were the
Okay.
You don't need to do it.
How many of you are doing a new training?
Hold it, not hold it.
How many people will you be training?
Oh,
Just one?
Are you okay with that?
Okay.
that's 1 mod.
But what was holding?
You guys are training 2 people.
Yeah.
So remember, if you give Station 3 one task from Station 4 and Station 2 another task from Station 4, that's 2 people you will be training? Just two? Oh, you're right, thank you for keeping me honest. That was intentional,
I think
good.
we were waiting. Let's get the
So we can only do one training?
Just one training. Make the best use of your money. So accountants, if there's training involved, make sure you notate that. $5,000. I can tell you what, I'm going to go into the training business because that's good money. That is good money. You on the right track? All right, you guys know what you're doing? Have you guys done adequate training? Have you guys repositioned where you need to be? Okay. You guys ready? Set and go.
Just something went wrong when I was playing flu.
She's back to the original. There you go. That's better.
60 seconds.
If those planes were worth $2 million, just frogs were worth $50 million. So watch, she's a flipper.
45 seconds.
We'll give it to the Army.
20. Ten. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The factory has shut down power. All right. So, all right, accountants, do your job. You have one job to do. Some groups are having a hard time.
That was the difference, right? Obviously.
So, if your team has done all your accounting, raise your hand. All of the accounting?
We have mathematicians.
We have math, okay, good. All right, so you guys are good, you guys are good? You guys are good in the back? And we're almost good here, we're good here?
Yeah.
Okay.
We did much better.
So I'll come to that table last. What did you guys learn well, how did round 3 go?
What's our best round?
Best round yet.
The logo from station to station.
So you move the logo,
Busy the whole time. We did 50% more planes than the time.
50% more planes than the time before. And then you did more than round 2 was even better than round 1.
Right.
Okay, so you did round 1 we changed our width. And from round 1 to 2 we changed width.
5 to 6 to 9.
Nice. 5 to 6 to 9. Good work. How about you guys?
I put it in staying consistent. We produce 6 things each round.
Interesting. It's not supposed to happen.
Really good playing field. People fly permanent.
So let me ask you this
First
then.
round, we had way too much whip.
Okay.
Didn't make as much. The second round, we had less whip, so we made more. The third round, we had similar to the second whip, and a little more training time.
And what were your profits from round 2 to 3? You dropped? Okay. You trained more? Okay, so it was an even, except you spent on training. So, did you learn anything from that? Made the wrong adjustment, right? So, unfortunately, in this exercise, you don't have a round 4, but you would probably do something different. You made mention, and I don't know if it was a joke or not, but hang on, guys, because I find this to be a curious. Hey, listen in, check in. Hey, hello. Thank you. You made mention, maybe it was a joke, I don't know, but the quality of the planes were better. Was that a true statement?
I think so.
Yeah?
We're getting better.
Getting better each time? Good. So I would say that's, even though the profits were slightly off, I mean, that's a thing where we have to consider, right? Did our quality go up, but maybe it cost us a little more? Then you can kind of look at those and dial them up or down depending on what makes the most sense for the organization. So that's an interesting observation. Again, it's a data point. It's a data point from which we can start to have dialogue about, right? What about this? Hey guys, I want everyone to kind of listen in. What did you guys learn?
So in our third round, we found that we were able to maximize our profits, but we were still flush to market